Welcome, friends, enemies, and the indifferent, to another podcast of Night of the Black Sun with myself, the Baron von Aphid Miller, Rob, otherwise known as. Um, this time around, I'm going to be chatting with Johnny, who is both an international man of mystery, a vague figure on the fringes of the internet, and also one of the members of the seminal Scottish punk band AUK. Um, so it's my pleasure to introduce you, Johnny. How are you doing?
Hi Rob, pleased to talk to you, mate.
Very good to hear from you, man. If you want to sit a little bit closer to the mic, I think we'll have it'll balance out a wee bit better then.
Well, how's up?
Sounds okay to me. I hope so. Now, yeah, you and I have sort of been batting emails back and forth for the last few years, notably, really, since things went a little bit funny in my world. And one of the original people that kind of got in touch and said, "How you doing?" And if you need somebody to chat to, so stuff like that. So it's always the hats off to you, and thank you for your handshake in troubled times.
That's a
Uh,
pleasure, my mate. Yeah, pleasure.
yeah, and it's been good to hear from you and hear some of your opinions on some of the strange goings on in the world and all the rest of that. So, did you ever listen to the last podcast with Scruff at all?
Yeah, I did actually. I really enjoyed them. The two of
Have
them.
you ever met the boy?
I haven't met Scruff, no, no.
No. I mean, he's a lovely fella. And it's funny. It's because Pete from Antisect had a bit of a to do after having done a chat with me, and in retrospect, you look over that. There's nothing there which is different than the normal Pete that we know and love. So, you know, um, but when it comes to people like Scruff, I think that people realize that he's an untouchable because that man, he's like if you like, the personification, the spirit of old punk rock, and he's been doing that since before the dinosaurs. So if anybody wants to have a pop at Scruff, it's like tough luck, mate. You don't have the credentials as far as I'm concerned. So I'll stick by my mates, so they stick by me.
Yeah, I mean that should be that. It should be anything like that. As we've said before, we all have our opinions on matters. Uh, we differ. Doesn't mean to say I want to take the old proverbial axe and come after you. Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. We kind of like grew up in an environment where you had a right to have an opinion. Sometimes you'd have to defend it, but generally speaking, we were still talking to one another rather than taking a big Wendy and yeah, and unfriending everybody you
I
possibly could.
mean,
So
these things happen all the time. It's just it is what it is, and
yeah,
there's not a lot we can really do with things like that. But
it's a unique phenomena to the modern world as well, though, isn't it? Really?
well, I really think so. I mean, nowadays you have the old safe spaces and everything else going on, so everybody seems to get upset at the drop of a hat. Basically, yeah,
Hmm.
it is crazy, crazy times, Ken, crazy
Yeah,
times. But hey. That's
that's the
what
way
we're
it
here
is.
for. That's what we're here for on this journey, as they call it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your journey personally as well. Because I remember the name AUK, and it's basically something that you'd see in fanzines and stuff like that. But to us, to be frank, back down in the West Country back in the 80s, Scotland didn't exist. It's a faraway mythical country. It's like Ultima Thule or something like that. It's like there was nowhere above Newcastle, but we did hear rumors of bands playing up that way. And I believe, if I'm right, if I'm not wrong, it was AUK that was kind of instrumental in enticing people up north of the border. Is that right?
I wouldn't say we were instrumental in enticing people up the border. I mean, you obviously had like Watty and the Exploit It and Oi Polloi and bands like that, and that's really where we came in.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, my brother had some people together as a band, and he asked, "Hey, do you fancy coming in doing vocals with no direction here?" And at that time, I kind of got off on the cross stuff. Never agreed with everything, but so we popped along and met the rest, and the next thing we knew, we were officially a band, and that was sort of like me on vocals and the girl Mel on vocals and Miguel, who was another vocalist, and Gary on bass, and my brother Ian Influx on guitar.
Mm.
So basically, we went to Edinburgh, I think something to do with the uni, and we met up with Deek with Oi Polloi and had a few conversations, did that. So we decided to put the, as they call it in bits I've read online, Anarchy and Fife. So we did that about 1983. That one, that was
Right.
about the only time the full band actually got out and played. With Specs
83.
Andrew.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I was like the Joe Strummer for AUK. I was the older bloke.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
83. I mean, yeah, we would have just come back from touring in Italy back then, our first experience of going and doing something in another country. But yeah, that's a long way back now, isn't it, mate?
well, there was a lot of bands kind of kicked about in Fife, but to be honest, up where we were, you still seem part of it, but isolated at the same time.
Hmm.
Uh, and like I said, I was very influenced by the cross and kind of doing the books like The Anarchist by James Joel and The Roads
Hmm.
to Freedom by sort of Bertrand Russell. But Alternative, a band from Dunfermline, me and Ian would also hang out at the pad in Dunfermline with Rodney
Hmm.
Relax. They were sort of dubbed the Scottish Crass because they did the single on the Crash label, a bit like yourselves when things kicked off with them recording.
So
Uh,
you boys were all Fifers?
yeah, yeah, we
Uh-huh.
were off Fife, England, Rothes actually.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the big city was Edinburgh for you then, was it?
yeah, you mean if you wanted to do anything like that, say it was Edinburgh or even there in Dunfermline.
Hmm.
I mean, later on, obviously, he heard of the band The Skids. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, we used to go and see The Skids a lot and other bands. I had it was Dunfermline Ballroom. You had all the sort of punk bands coming up there, and
Mm.
so that would be it. And really got on great with Richard Jobson and
Oh, okay. Was he
so.
pretty level then? Was he just a normal guy?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Very,
Yeah.
very down to earth. The same with Stuart Adamson.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's kind of weird when you sort of, yeah, I like this band and people can be standoffish or whatever. But
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of the gigs we went to see, Richard would be up in the balcony and would be standing blathering. And to be
Okay.
fair, even out with that, especially like Stuart, I mean, the guy was with me was absolutely excellent. Where it was the Skids playing or meeting up at the Ravillos gigs and Rosillos or what
Zillows.
carnations
There you
that they
go.
were
I
there.
mean, was it
I
Skids
mean,
went on to Theatre of Hate as well? Was it Big Country? I know that incarnation.
no, that was Stuart. That was Stuart after the demise, the Skids.
Okay.
But no matter where he was, anywhere, that guy would be the first one over. How's it going, Johnny? Oh, great
Nice.
to see
Yeah.
you. Which is cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't see the other side, some musicians, but
Yeah.
punk was good for that. Like I said, when we used to go to the pad and hang out at the pad in Dunfermline, which was basically a squatter there. Uh, Alternative was the band that was gone,
Yeah.
and Rodney and the rest of them, great people.
Hmm.
Uh, and we sort of came out, I suppose, out by accident, if you want. Like I said, we had that meeting with Rob, Oi Polloi Deek, and we
Hmm.
put on that gig. We were supposed to go and play Dundee Sands, a festival up there, but the rest of them couldn't make it. And then things kind of fizzles
Yeah.
out at that kind of point.
So
So,
how many shows did you do all in all then, do you reckon?
well, with that incarnation of UK, it was really just one big main one.
Hmm.
Uh, and a lot of things was various halls where you practice, and they always seem to turn out more than that, and
Mm.
that's the kind of thing we'd done. Uh, my brother Ian, he was up to Dundee, getting into whatever capers up there. I mean, the place ended up there. It was like the old fencing and the barbed wire stay out. It was all creepy. I had to go and
Yeah.
put him out of there, and he had to go and get his head straight, if you want. But as
Yeah.
recording wise, that was kind of funny because I was doing a lot of different stuff. Uh, and I was keeping my hand in,
Mm.
And Ian came up for England. He was moved in there by that time. And for some reason, he had this offer to do a tape compilation for, what was it, Blast of Anger. It was sort of an anarchist benefit tape for UK Resist.
Yeah.
And he got any songs. So I was actually working on another tune, and I ended up doing this thing called The Earth Dies Screaming.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So Will, another Geordie lad, Willie Woods was a mate of mine. He was going to do a recording on the old 4-track stuff, but he was never available. Uh, uh, I was laughed. I did a what would you call it? A parody for him, saying the guy who's never out is never in. Knocking on the door.
Yeah.
uh,
It's funny
uh,
coming. You mentioned Oi Polloi a couple of times there, and it's like, to be honest, it's like I never came across them at all. But I guess by the time that they'd come into notice really for a lot of folks is I was already out, 87, I guess 88, 89, 87 really I was outside of the whole music scene as such. So I didn't really poke my nose back into that for quite some time afterwards. But I believe there was one or two of them that ended up at Salmore Rosteg, which is the Gaelic college here on Skye.
yeah, they did. I did come across a few of the oi polloi things with the Gaelic sleeves and stuff like that. Yeah, they
Mm,
did do that. Uh, it's kind of weird with these because when you come out it, there's always a feel, as you know, with things that happen with Tow Cross and that. There's sometimes this wee cliquey thing going on, and if you're not really standing on the rooftops with your banners, they get a bit upset and shit
mm,
like that. So,
yeah.
uh, but like I said, for me as a young guy, uh, I mean, musically, I mean, I was like that for 2 or 3 year old. I mean,
Mm.
I was that old. I was listening and watching Ready Steady Go and flipping all these programs.
Yeah,
But
okay.
but the uncles were all sort of mad rockabilly, rock and roll gang.
Right.
So I was always interested in that.
Uh-huh.
And Alan had guitars, he had drums. So I was always blasting away writing.
So you
And like I
write in
said,
the environment all the time.
yeah,
Hmm.
basically, yeah. But after things sort of calmed down, I did move away. And it was kind of funny. I'd been playing 9, 10 years with a different band. Sort of, it was actually doing like covers, glam rock type stuff, but
Brilliant.
good work.
Yeah.
One was great. We did. I don't know if you ever heard them, T-Rexity, the big T-Rex sort of tribute band.
No, I didn't.
Uh,
No. Yeah.
Bloody brilliant. The
A bit of
guys,
fun. I was a big T-Rex fan growing up. It's one of my
um,
first fave
you
bands.
check out the videos on YouTube, man.
Oh, I'll have a look at that. I'm just
Danielle's just look, and it there. Danielle's just looks the spitting image of Mark Bolan, and the sounds fucking phenomenal,
brilliant.
phenomenal.
Yeah. I'm
But
just gonna I've got to interject because the sound as you got in that you can hear in the background here, you might hear a lot of that kind of noise. And there's a big storm going on just now.
you're
Last couple
getting
of days we've been
storms.
a bit bad. The normal West Coast thing, it's like 50, 60 mile an hour wind. It's not a biggie, but it's enough to be able to make a bit of noise up here. And it's not exactly a studio environment, it's just me surrounded by old postcards in big boxes. So apologies for that for anybody that's
The
listening, but
idyllic life, is to say.
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
So
So yeah.
anyway, just to roll that kind of along. I mean, I got enough of doing the glam rock stuff, and
Mm,
there was a thing called the Anarchist and Fife, and the information was kind of wrong. So I kind of put that straight, uh, and we put that version. It was Earth Day Screaming. It was sort of under the moniker this tribe, and just out the sheer out the blue, Rob and Paul from Burnt Cross reached out, and they sort of, hey, I'd love to hear that track done properly. And me mainly being vocalists when I've been performing, I thought, well, sod this. I mean, I'm playing other people's stuff, doing this all the time. I says, I'm going to just put a studio in and I'm going to try my best to do this.
mm.
So I run one up, sent it away, and about a week later, it was, hey, do you fancy doing a split album?
Oh, great. Yeah.
And I'm sort of going, yeah, me and Wayne, great.
So when was
uh,
this?
but I agreed, that would be, 90s or something, maybe even later than that. And basically, that's what I did.
Mm,
I started to write some newer stuff, recorded some older stuff, and then I contacted Ian and said, "Look, do you fancy sending up a few tunes? We'll stick it in, and we'll go ahead and do that." So there was lots of labels interested, and we put
mm.
that out. After that, we did one more, like a single release with Rise and Where Are the Gods. Uh, and way much later, I got a nice wee letter, and we suddenly had a double vinyl release of the Earth Dies Screaming.
Right.
So yeah, that was cool. I
Yeah,
mean, as you're a
nice.
kid, if you're a kid, you just want to play some gigs and put out some records and
Oh,
go,
yeah.
well, I've done that. That's
Yeah.
me. I'm I'm
And you
I'm
and you're
cool.
made up, aren't you, about stuff too. So it's like,
Well, that's it. I
yeah.
mean, and then I just put some anarchist poetry out on anarchist sites and that.
Hmm. So
But like
when did you hang up your mic then?
I suppose in some ways I never did
Hmm.
because certainly as far as AUK was concerned, I did. But I started doing a lot of kind of solo type stuff. But it was more in your folk orientated stuff
Yeah.
because I have this thing about culture, if you like,
Hmm.
and I think most people, they work 9 to 5. All they want to do is when they get their 2 weeks holidays, jump on a plane to Spain or wherever. Uh, and they never really delve into the history that's round about them.
Hmm.
And Fife, where we were, was one of the Pictish kingdoms, if you want to
Right.
put it that way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Still referred to
and
as the Kingdom of Fife, of course.
yeah, they still use that moniker. But growing up for me, I mean, I was at my grandmother's down on the Weems on the East Coast, and
Mm.
that's where they have the rare sort of what they call the Weems caves. It's all the Pictish carvings inside. Uh, so you'd go in there and you go, oh, what's this one? Oh, that's this kind of animal.
Yeah.
And I suppose the famous one's the Viking boat, which that's what they dubbed it locally. But I didn't really think it was a Viking boat. Not a
Hmm.
lot of history and pics in
Yeah.
that sense. But so that was the kind of environment it was there. And I just thought, oh, well, let's do some local stuff. And then I got involved with the castle, Balgony Castle, which was a sort of idyllic scene. If you're looking out your bedroom, there's this crumbled old castle sitting. But I
Okay.
mean, it got taken over, and I think it was a guy from Maxwell redone the tower. Then it was sold. Uh,
What were you doing there,
and
Johnny?
well, with that, I'd always been interested. Let's say history, you would go away doing the library, sit with the wee spools and
Mm.
twiddle them up a bit. Uh,
The old
but it was
the micro,
actually,
yeah,
yeah, the micro things, yeah. And
microfilms, yeah.
I don't know, there was one time, people are people, nothing changes. And I was going down, and there's this "Get Out, You English," whatever,
Hmm.
uh, sprayed along one of the outside border walls. And I went, "What the fuck?" Uh, so I really got on well with Raymond, who was dubbed the Laird.
Hmm.
Uh, and I had a wee bit backlash on that one. And we did some poetry things, and it was featured in the local gazette, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, the guy does it all himself. I mean, you can Heritage Scotland's and other people. There's important things in history, and they just didn't give a shit. They'll let it crumble. But of course, as soon as he started doing his own thing there, fixing it up, and doing this with his son, they're all interested. And he
Everyone gets
basically gave
interested
him,
once you've started something.
yeah,
Yeah.
he sort of
Yeah.
gave them the finger and said, no, no, no.
Yeah.
So out of that, it was sort of, oh, we're having some fun, and now you were created the Bard of Balgony, which sounds very.
Oh, okay.
So, but it was good actually. I did a gig in there with loads of people for St Andrews University pipers and that,
Okay.
telling
Yeah.
stories. But that's the interesting thing with all that, because we still go on about these things. I got a mate here for uh, North Carolina, and he was
Hmm.
in contact actually. But my wife Vicky's very into the dog men and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And he says, I want to run it by you, John. He says, this guy's on. He says, you know, he says, we were the Wolven. He says, and this place was ours.
Hmm.
And I think it goes down that route, you know, the old wolves versus vampire type thing.
Okay.
And I've kind of noticed that a lot where the wolves, I take it's like the Christian type thing, and St. Christopher's a big dog headed thing. And you sort of wonder where that goes, because that brings you into sort of Atlantis and Lemuria and some of the Scottish things that, oh, we came for the shining people. And it kind
Hmm.
of translates out here to the US and the Native Americans, which is
Yeah.
actually quite interesting in the context of their creation stories, the same like the Anishinaabe anyway.
Yeah. Well, there seems to be this sort of like a renaissance of investigation into where did the Native American people come from, and it's like they don't appear to have been the first people in the Americas at all. But they may have come and taken over some of the sites that were already there, particularly some of the mound culture and things like that, where you've had it seems fairly legitimate that there were plenty of giants, which were the bodies which were pushed away into the depths of the Smithsonian Institute, never to be seen again. But there was waves and waves of that back in the 1870s, 1880s that were documented
Well,
and reported in the newspapers. But
I mean, I suppose the world at large has always been this sort of conquest and moving on and finding on new lands and stuff. I mean, Scotland, well, take the hell of Britain, you know,
mm,
the Germanic tribes and the Vikings and the Mercians and the Anglo-Saxons. So yeah, I mean Scotland's the same. Who were the Picts? Not much, and then you got the Celtic side of things. So yeah,
yeah, there seems to be a
but
resurgence in this again, this idea about finding out where people come from, and there's a lot of talk of the Scythians and the Frisians and all this kind of stuff as being the primary tribal unit that came across from the Indian subcontinent.
yeah,
Uh, Go on.
well, it's like you're saying there. Even Robert Bruce in his famous address to the Pope, again, he brings in, "We came by the way of Scythia."
Oh,
So
I didn't know this.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's written in that declaration. So
Of our growth, is that?
yeah, the
Okay.
Declaration of Arbroath, yeah.
Really, really?
But
Okay.
so you start looking into that, and then that brings in, when you get down the rabbit hole, you're in the next thing you're into Tartaria and
Yeah, no, I've not gone down there yet, mate. I'm kind of like
uh,
studiously avoiding that. I'm not doing flat Earth and I'm not doing Tartaria
Yeah,
just yet. You know what I mean? It's just like I'm holding off on that. But the thing is, everybody's heard references to Tartary and all that kind of stuff growing
yeah,
up. You
yeah,
know, I know something now. I'm just not. I haven't investigated yet what people's angle is on that, what they're trying to sell as such, because of that interest in the Khazarian kind of area as well, which is kind of modern day Ukraine, really. And they seem to all
yeah.
constellate around that.
Yeah, I think so. And in the main, I've never really delved into it massively,
Mm,
uh, because I mean, I get like you say, I get taken up with the more of the esoteric, the meaning of life, and mysticism,
mm,
and things like that. And I think now the period we're in, it seems even more important because I mean, people are all losing their minds and whatever.
mm.
And that goes down to what you say is consciousness.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, if you go down the roots to say people like Dr. Robert Steiner, the Austrian occultist,
Mm.
uh, who did his esotericism, but he was a sort of Christian Gnostic thing. And Franz Burden, obviously Czech occultist and teacher of Hermetics.
That's not a name that I've heard for a while. I
Uh,
got into Franz Barden some time ago when I was living on my own, going crazy in a caravan on
I
the
did. I
shores of
did do the. I did do some of
the
the
exercises.
level exercises.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know how you when you go to your bed, you got everyday life, and it's rushing round, and you have this problem that you're lying in your bed, and everything's.
Hmm.
And I've managed to get rid of that completely. It doesn't matter what crises are going on or whatever.
Yeah,
I go and I don't have that. And of course, your old friend, Mr. John Lamb Lash.
yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
but I think these are things with stuff that I talked to you in one of the emails when we're on about demons and what they are or what's affecting the psyche and the humans. And I think it's probably very important to try and understand these people's teachings for these current times.
Yes,
And as John would probably, Lash would probably phrase the dilemma, has humanity been infected by the mind virus?
of the
And
content. Yeah, consciousness.
can,
Yeah, well, it would appear that way, wouldn't it? It's just we kind of need to understand um where we're at. Do you get the feeling at the moment? I proposed this to somebody in an email. I was catching up with my mails earlier on, and it just seems to me at the moment like there's a lot more information is becoming available very, very quickly, and it's as though some of the intangible clues that we were trying to knit together beforehand are the connections are being made. It's like it's like the Neoplatonists developing this form of charts of correspondences, whereby you could say, a planetary a planetary body corresponds to a metal, corresponds to a number, and onto a gemstone and whatever, blah blah blah.
yeah,
But it's almost
yeah,
as though we have a broader spectrum now to draw from.
yeah, I think so. But I mean, that's just if you think consciousness, I mean, I suppose most people will say, well, what the heck is consciousness? But when you think about it, I mean, the very foundation of your waking day is consciousness being built up in your senses. You know, the old nervous system rattles information around the nerve cells or neurons, kind of sort of processes that information and triggers everything from breathing and talking. So essentially, everything that's going on around us is actually food for thought. And
Mm,
if you go down there like Hermetics angle in that, according to the ancients, the five elements are related to the humans through our sensory organs: ether, air, fire, water, being related to hearing, touch, vision, taste, smell.
yeah,
So it's like everything has been created into being through the elements. You know, we do the macrocosm, the universe, and the microcosm being the humans.
yeah,
So we are inherently connected to each other, and that is a very important thing to remember as we go along in our sort of journey in the physical world. Uh, I mean, people, we've always been intrigued by the physical and this mortal, but equally intrigued by the spiritual, whatever that may be to what other people that subscribe to, we'll put it that way. And like I said to people would have said, well, so I mean, what is your spiritual journey? And I said, well, basically, you just start where you are, respect what's gone before you.
Mm.
If you ask for divine help, whatever that may be given to your thing, don't
Mm.
be afraid to have unanswered questions. Everybody walks their own journey. And
Yeah.
we've said before, we'll all encounter roadblocks along the way. Just don't give up. You're
Yeah.
probably stronger than you think. Assess the situation, take a detour, overcome the obstacle, and
And
affirm that and
it
move
seems at
on.
times that we're actively writing our own story as well. You know, there's times when you catch yourself in the middle of that, and you realize it's a page from your book that you're doing at this point, and you go, oh, well, you know, it's like I've done this before, but also everything previous to this was going to constellate around the moment now anyway. It's as if we do create reality itself in that sense.
I think we do, and I mean, I suppose you could even lump Nikola Tesla. You know the
Very
quote:
much.
If you only knew the magnificence 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe."
Yeah.
And that's sort of referring to connection with the divine.
It's
Setting
the yeah.
intentions and affirmation and that belief that there is this connection to something out there that's higher,
What a
whatever
damn
that.
shame that Tesla's not well, that he was done in really, you know, or rather, you know, he was reduced to a shadow of a man and then had all of his stuff stolen from him. It's just we could have
Well, that's it.
we've missed out 100 years or whatever of progress because of things like that, I think.
Well, actually, just a wee while back, and I saw a nice, interesting documentary on him actually, where they were trying out some of the inventions that they had, and they set up the two towers and firing an electricity along the bolt, and it was coming back through the ground to sort of power a little boat that was going to fire along the water, and
Hmm.
and they worked.
So
So
was that the Grenfell Tower? Was it that big one that he got involved with? I
I
think he
think
might.
that it was something today along the lines. It was sort of a big mass whole
Yeah, I
thing where
think he had the
today we
backing of JP Morgan at that point as well, and then he had the backing was going to withdrawn as it because he wasn't making miracles quickly enough for these for the guys with the money. So
well, that's
it,
a big problem. It's always been things are. I mean, technology and things great, and they can have some great purposes, but there's always this double-edged sword thing goes on,
yeah,
and when it comes to obviously things like hey, free energy, that's going to get knocked on the head. There's no money in free energy, mate. Come on,
well,
man.
that's the issue, isn't it? It's like the pause button has been set over us really since the time of Tesla because yeah, I do believe that people do keep on coming up with some solutions, some not the big answer yet, perhaps, but the problem is that people always think in terms of money. So this idea about open source web sharing of experiments as they go along, as you know, it's like in real time. I think that's really good, and that people obviously could be recognized for that. But I think anybody that has got solutions is going to have to give those solutions away because I think you know they're going to be they're never going to have to worry about anything again in their life. It'd be the biggest gift you could ever give to humanity, you know?
Well, that is how many stories have came out that people have invented this and that, and in some cases they end up in the boneyard. Come on, I mean, you just stay quiet. There's no need for that nonsense about here.
Yeah,
Uh, and it's sad. I mean, the internet was a great thing. I mind way back when I corresponded with we were talking about even just recording, and oh yeah, you could do
yeah.
it on this wee box when we were all young and enthusiastic, and oh, the things we could have done with that kind of stuff would have been great. But
Yeah, yeah, but it's
uh,
almost, you know, it's such a double-edged sword because we find
that
ourselves in the
says
predicament. We can't we can't appear to do without it. It's like, oh, I don't believe that for myself. I can do without it, but it's going to be a very, very different life, and it's going to be kicking things back to the early 90s, if not before
Yeah,
that, you know?
yeah. I mean, I like it for searching out stuff that I'm interested in. I
Mm,
mean, things like the old FB book and everything like that, I can really do without, and I'm really off of all that quite a lot.
yeah.
Because I'm interested in other things. And me, obviously, you cherry pick the information there. I mean, there's no any one right solution out there, and that's what it keeps us active. It keeps the brain cells going, and I kind of like that kind of feeling. Uh, and like I said, late there, it's been really looking into people like Nathaniel J. Gillis, and who's an author, lecturer, and religious demonologist.
So after that very brief commercial break for Pictish King Fragrance for Men, we are
Mhm.
back. Johnny, we were talking about a fella called Nathaniel J. Gillis. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. That leads on to the kind of things we're talking about there. I mean, Nathaniel is an author, lecturer, and religious demonologist, and it kind of struck me some of the things he was saying about like the succubus and things like that, uh, where this ancient force that coexists with us or comes here, uh, how they can manipulate minds to think you're with your wife or things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really an intent to sort of whack your energy or seed and things. But the one thing I did find with looking into Gnosticism, he was on about like orbs, no like the dusty orbs or anything, but the white orbs.
Of light, yeah.
And I was curious. I don't know what was the meeting was people there, but allegedly this orb appeared, and then it solidified, and a being came out shaking hands with people, and then somebody went, "Well, its hands is getting it's like the hands disappearing again," and then it popped back in the orb and then poof, away,
Mm-hmm. Where was
and
this?
it kind of got me. I'm not sure where the actual occurrence happened, but the thing that struck me with that is like people were out in the woods or in the forest and that, and they keep going, I keep seeing these white orbs or some kind of flashing orbs, and they're going about.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of took me back to when I was looking into the origin of the world or the Gnostic book of creation, if you like, for the Nag Mahab, sorry, Nag Hammadi library. And it kind of describes a creation myth that Adam was basically this orb of light. And you
Mm-hmm.
have this idea that this orb that came for the Pleroma, more higher up in the chain, these things with the archons and things. And basically, they wanted to trap this essence. So they fashioned a body and trapped the orb within.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the body couldn't really move or do anything because it was trapped inside, so it couldn't go back. And then, obviously, in that instance of story, Sophia Zoe comes and blasts the breath of life, and then it was able to exist in this mortal realm.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of thought, I said, yeah, that's very curious how you have that type of thing, and then he's on about orbs and things solidifying. And I think if you ever watched anybody that's probably ever watched the Ghost Hunters and stuff like that, if you actually think about these things, where it's an apparition appearing through a wall or anything like that. There is these instances where somebody will go, I go, what's wrong? God, man, you've got scratches in your face or something. That
Mm.
kind of tells you, well, if you're an ethereal, you ain't going to scratch anybody. So at some
Yeah.
point, you
Something
had to
is
go,
temporarily manifesting in
yeah, temporarily manifesting and able to cause harm
Mm.
and stuff like that. So I found that kind of a quite fascinating thing. Uh, and I do kind of believe that if you're going down the old demiurge, you old above and the archons and things like that, because there is these negative and positive polarities that exist.
Mm.
Uh, and we've all had, I'm assuming most, we had their unexplained things that they couldn't quite relate or understand what the heck just happened there. I'm positive of this, whether that's shadow beings or
Yeah. It
stuff
seems to
like that.
be it's up to interpretation and also context, isn't it? It's like the same kind of thing you'd find in the UFO abduction phenomena where um beings would appear to be real that can come through but can only manifest for a certain amount of time. And as
Yeah,
you speculate there, perhaps that's because they have a link into our real life force, or whatever, in some manner, or link into consciousness itself and an ability to be able to appear as we wish them to appear because of the whole thing about the UFO thing itself really being something that took off significantly. It didn't begin in, but it took off significantly after the Mount Rainier incident in 1947. So
yeah,
you had you kind of like you got this space age kind of paraphernalia being associated with it, with the phenomena that had always been there, and previous to that would be seen as the orbs, as the fairy lights, as the hollow hills, and all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's always been there, eh?
yeah. It is, and I think the strange thing, especially in today's mad world, I mean, at one time you're talking or people claiming to see UFOs or whatever, and it was, oh, that's just a trick of the light. It's whatever. And suddenly, especially in I find in the last few years, it's everywhere. It's on the news. It's in unidentified object, and I mean,
Mm.
where you want to lump that into some agenda playbook and the old Project Bluebeam or whatever.
Have you
Uh,
noticed though that there's been a real significant decline in the actual hands-on abduction phenomena. So I just don't hear about that anymore. It's as though that ceased at one point. Like so
yeah,
so it's for me it looks like as I think it was Scruff speculating about that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is perhaps military applications. Um, but we don't seem to be seeing so much of the phenomena itself as it used to be, coming into it's almost like a spiritual phenomena that's coming into human space and interacting.
I think it is kind of more like you say that spiritual thing, but obviously, I think now I think it gets this craziness with these. It's the agenda thing again that goes, and I mean, Jesus is coming back, and it's going to be the end of the world.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, hands-on abductions you don't seem to hear a lot more of. But I kind that kind of plays into somebody's point of view. Oh, aliens didn't exist. You can't leave the planet. That's just all bull crap.
Mm.
And those who are convinced they've had that experience, and I mean, I'm not here to sit and say, oh, that's rubbish, because I've had my own kind of things that's happened to me in the past growing up, where that's the thing of sleep paralysis, which
Mm.
I was really, oh, I went through lots of periods that I
You
had.
told me that you mentioned this in an email to me ages ago. I was trolling through what we've said to one another over the years, and yeah, you mentioned instances of astral projection, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, astral projection wise, I mean, it's not something that I was particularly trying to do. I did get into breathing exercises and, the old chakra thing. And I sort of wanted to take time out. So I would just lay down, closing my eyes, think your happy thoughts, as they say,
Mm.
and build up that kind of feeling of euphoria, if you like, joy, concentrating on breathing. And I think that one we talked about is where this, like, you hear like the floaters in your eyes when your eyes are shut or whatever, but there
Mm.
were a distinct spiral kind of appeared.
Mm.
And before I came, I was boom, and I was traveling doing this kind of worm spiral thing, and I suddenly just came out at the other end, and it was all these buildings and corridors, but I didn't feel much in control, and you were sort of getting dragged along these long corridors and things, and you could tell there was pillars with windows at the side, but you just couldn't turn your blooming head to see what was there. And I mind it hit a corner type thing, and there was some figures that was too, you were traveling too quick to see. And I got zapped round the corner, and the next thing there was just these big gates, and they opened up, and there was all these big towers zooming up into the sky. Uh, and before you can it, you were zapped back.
Mm.
Now,
Was this like a very vivid landscape, or was it something
oh,
that was
very,
kind of?
no, it was very vivid.
Mm.
And apart from that one, uh, one that really, I suppose, spooked me more in that sense, because you're sort of going, oh, well, was that a travel, or did I fall asleep and something happened? I was walking about in the house, and for some reason, I got this crystalline thing appearing at my eye, and I'm going, bloody heck, and I'm looking at a rub and that, and it just would not go away. And I'm going, have I got a hair caught in my eye? And I'm pulling it, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm dabbing it with water, and she's a flipping heck. And I just started walked along the corridor, but it was there, clear as a bell.
Mm.
And I walked into the room, so I just sat on the edge of the bed, and I'm staring, and this thing just got brighter. And I sort of went, yeah, I'm going to sound bloody stupid talking to yourself, sort of thing. I says,
Mm.
what do you wish to communicate or something? And it sort of moved forward, and these then row of lights came above my head, and they were sort of flashing back and forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then a thing down at the side of my head. And I sort of, again, I says, like, is it want to communicate cool with me? Like, and it just kept doing that. And eventually, I mean, I'd lit a cigarette, and the cocky wee shit that you can took a draw, and I says, well, look, blew blew the cigarette smoke in that direction, and says, look, if you're going to waste my time, just bugger
Right. Yeah.
off. But it kind of did. But the
All right.
curious thing with these is where you talk about things solidifying and that. One of the instances I did have when I was trying these type of things, I kept getting a fake view, a sort of really distant view, and I'm going, and it happened so many times. And I says to Vicky, I goes, I don't know what this is. I says, it's like there's a pictograph. I'm not saying Egyptian or what it is. I says, but it bloody well keeps coming to me.
Mm.
So I do these exercises, if you've been at bright light, maybe like out the window, and you happen to close your eyes, but the frame of the window and everything appears.
Yeah. Different light as well. Yeah. Different
Yeah.
color. Yeah.
Well, I've got this habit now that I don't know if I'm trying to get muscle memory or what the heck, but if it happens, I'll instantly stop what I'm doing, and I'll try and hold that picture for as long as I possibly can. When
Yeah.
it starts to fade, I'll try and bring it back.
That's
Sometimes that
it's
can
a
that's successful sometimes.
it's a yoga exercise. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's not tantra.
I'm not too
It's the
sure.
tatras or something like that. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it is an exercise where you stare at the image of the flame and then you look away. And like you were alluding to earlier on, it's when you do these traveling experiences and stuff like that, not being able to control the environment is completely normal.
Yeah.
And people spend a lot of time and discipline in being able to develop their astral body, as they put it,
Mm.
to go in and to be able to see and make things happen around in there. And that seems to have been one of the prerequisites for sort of Western traditional magic as well, was to be able to develop the astral body
Well,
and that.
I think there's always this thing to that, even occultist type of things and that. You mean you're sort of going, you think you're in control, but you're not.
Mm,
You know, you're the tool, type of thing.
yeah.
But yeah, I did concentrate on that for a long time, and then it sort of never happened. And then
Mm,
one day out the blue, I was getting a bit dozy, and I was just laying on the bed, back up against the wall, and bloody heck, it came back, and I concentrated really hard, and this image just shot forward, and it was getting clear. And I kid you not, it was like metal shop shutters just went boom, right in front of my eyes, and I jumped back. And I'm
yeah.
going, what the heck was that? And I was discussing it. I says, is that a kind of, hey, you've gone far enough, you don't see here.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it did appear, it did get clear, and it was a sort of, it was like a basin and an island in the background, and this boat, we sort of old ancient rowing boat type thing, whatever they are, and a guy in it. But the curious bit that struck me was there were a guy down at the shore, and and he had the fish coming out the water, coming up into his body and out the other side.
Mm,
And that freaked me because that kind of gives me that, uh, the old Enki for the Anunnaki story where he's depicted that way. And I still can't fathom out why or how, but it was as real as I've had anything like that. So that was
yeah.
kind of spooky. And I'm a bit weary on that because I do believe sometimes these things like to lure you in if you want, and
Mm,
you're in control. I suppose it's like the people who like say abduction.
yeah.
You're probably there in your bed or wherever, uh, but to you, you're in some spacecraft and things happening, and that I
It's
guess
like
goes
when we're
down.
younger, we try and we sort of actively try to push all this stuff, don't we? It's like you're holding your breath and rolling your eyes or whatever. You're trying to make these experiences happen, and then you discover sort of drugs and psychedelics and all that kind of thing. And you go, well, I'll try it this way and all the rest of it. And then you get to a certain stage, you go, well, hang on a second, I don't really like what's happening here so much. It's best to
Yeah,
approach the whole
yeah.
thing with a clear mind.
It's funny you said psychedelics. There's a guy who's Dr. Richard Allen Miller. He's he's supposed to be part or was part of a type of last survivor thing in the Majestic 12 type of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh, and one of the curious things with that, he was on about crabgrass. And he says, he says that it's like the most common grass. It bugs up your flipping lawns and it comes out the cracks of the pavement. He says,
Mm.
but they're starting to find signs of DMT in that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, and this, I suppose it leads you into sort of crazy times. The April thing, where I don't know if you've ever heard the all of a sudden everywhere's announcing that there's this very rare occurrence of demon face syndrome. It has a name, can't pronounce it, but it's popping up everywhere. I mean,
Mm.
I never heard it in my life. And it seems to be article after article on various things. And it's this thing that as people look at others but can't see their human face, but a distorted like demon face.
Mm.
I mean, think, do you love anybody? No, I think things like that. Hey, with all the that's gone on with the allure of the total eclipse, and that
Mhm.
is
I was going to come to that one, Johnny. Like that's
uh,
on my list of subjects because here we are. We're like that's going to happen tomorrow, and people are, as they say in the States, losing their shit. Of course. Um,
yeah. I mean, well, I suppose more so in the US because of the totality thing.
mm,
Obviously, in the UK, it's kind of different. In the UK, we're more talking about Scotland's latest
with
curb laws
the
and
hate
all that.
crime bill. The
The
funny
hate crime.
we had a we had a total eclipse here several years back, and myself and my wife were up on a local the She Hill here, the Sheehan, which is like the the
Oh
fairy
yeah,
hill.
yeah, yeah.
And watching it from there, it's like, wow, everything did go a bit weird. It's like everything went very cold, obviously, and there was just these silence when these the shadows of like not shadows, but these black birds were flying overhead, and it's like everything went a bit weird. So I was driving into the town to see this guy in the garage afterwards, and I said, mate, were you out? Did you see the eclipse? He said, I don't believe in any of that shit. It's like, hey, what do you mean? What eclipses, suns, moons? What exactly is it you don't believe in? It's like, come on. So yeah, so we're on the cusp of some more hysteria, and think, yeah, nothing's going to happen where
Well,
that's
I don't
concerned.
think. I mean, I don't think it's going to project the end of the world or anything. But I think because of the whole hysteria and obviously true reports or fake reports. I mean, it's this. It kind of goes round the agenda type thing, but I
Mm,
mean, I've heard anyway that a lot of the places in the US over this particular path of totality. I mean, they've got military helicopters buzzing about.
yeah, but I mean
They're
that's
the
because there's
guys
going
in
to
the
be.
hazmat suits, you know.
But
Uh,
it's because they're expecting so many millions of people to start flooding into this corridor. So it's like, there'll be problems, that
yeah,
there'll be
yeah.
traffic.
Well, I think so because it does affect, like you said, there is these effects. I mean, they'll even say that an eclipse uh, disrupts the ionosphere type thing.
Yeah.
But people didn't look at it in the type of things. So, I mean, I guess these type of things are perfectly captured in one of my favourite Tau Cuss tracks. We control the fear, you know.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say because it's like a lot of these phenomena that you see, whilst they are natural occurrences that can be predicted ahead of time, they also seem to be used actively to promote particular ideas by particular people. So it's like they'll kind of push this thing into the box. It's like if you're
Yeah.
looking for something, you will find it. So there are
Well,
there are religious groups and ones with other sort of like fringe beliefs who will push this into their package and say this signifies that means this means that. It's like biblical prophecy as far as I see. It's like they're going out of their way at the moment to
it's
try and push all their ducks into a row. So it's like they found their red heifer now to go to took from Texas over to the Middle East. They want to sacrifice that the third temple, all this stuff. It's just like, well, go ahead, you knock yourself out, boys. But I don't subscribe to the necessary reality of that. I think that depends on how many people invest in it and say this is a sign of the end times.
well, that's the conundrum when we talk about consciousness and these abilities to manifest, whether that be uh, I suppose in America it would be the Super Bowl and or the footballs aside us. There's all these big, large crowds, and they're whacking up this energy, and
Mm,
uh, well, you know what they say about that type of thing, and they're doing sort of rituals and the occultist type of thing,
yeah.
and I suppose it for the average Joe that doesn't sort of take information and say compartmentalize it into to areas, and then you could push that to the side. I mean, I heard like in the States, apparently, anyway. I mean, they're going through saying, "Oh, the 2017 eclipse path and the total 2024 total eclipse path intersects, and that forms an X.
Hmm.
And the X in the Hebrew is called a taf, and the pictograph that symbols ownership, they still make a covenant, join two things, make a
Yeah.
sign,
Nineveh.
and that kind of goes there. What is it? The one Carbondale in Illinois. It goes
Hmm.
there, and that's actually called known as Little Egypt. And I think was it something like 67 years ago, a physicist David Pines predicted that sort of electrons in a solid uh, do strange things and call it a demon particle. And of course, then you've
Right.
got the old,
Yeah,
well,
CERN's kicking
67,
up. Yeah.
6 plus 7's 13, and 1 plus 3's 4. That
Yeah.
pertains to the
Well, you see
judgment.
that the funny thing is there is something. Well, there is everything to that numerology, but it's kind of been twisted around through what I call the Babylonian death cult, and it's just this kind of like
Well, that's a bit.
weaponization of
Yeah.
mathematical reality, being able to say that things, the universe can be understood through these things, frequency, number,
Yeah.
vibration, and things can be replicated that way. We don't know yet, or at least the common man, we don't know quite how this is done, but at some level they would have been working on this for millennia.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think not so much maybe in the UK, but I mean, I've heard, well, like I say, we've heard things for the US and Mexico, anything that's actually in that, what they call band, uh, uh, the total eclipse kind of thing. And I mean, they push the devil's sort of horn comets new in the sky. And I mean, NASA, okay, NASA and all these people, they tend to name all these things all in that kind of thread
Mm.
where NASA's now going to, it could be understandable actually, firing 3 rockets into the ionosphere, sort of one prior to the eclipse, one during, and one after to get sensor information about how things change. But of course, they have to call the mission a PEP, named after some serpent
Yeah,
deity,
yeah.
and this all adds to these things.
But it's
Uh,
it's it's like what this does is it ritualizes stuff to the extent that even your normal people are involved because of that, because of the way that things are named and because of the way they're allocated. So it entraps us into a dialectic whereby we're involved in a ritual, if whether we like it or not. So you kind of like you have a choice and you say, well, I know that what some of these people like to do is they like to to control the field or control the energy. So the energetic is very,
yeah,
very low because that's very easy to get stuff into our personal space, into our sacred space, if you like, within us. So they implant stuff when people are off guard. These sort of things put people off guard because they it's like there's a creation of uncertainty. There's a creation of sort of like a faux fear and a possibility of that around it. So it's an ideal thing for what you were alluding to, the manifestation of the vampiric sort of energies as well. So
yeah,
it's like a succubus incubus on a societal level, and we've seen that in a very real sense over the last few years as well. We've seen this sowing of an ideology and of an agenda, which has allowed people to vibrate, if you like. It sounds such a weird thing to say, but yes, to allow people to resonate. That would be a better word.
yeah, yeah,
Resonate at a
yeah,
very low frequency level, so that our immediate surroundings are a reflection of that. Now, what I firmly believe now, and what I was kind of trying to allude to with Scruff the other day, it's like it's our responsibility now to be aware of what we're doing with our energies. It's like actually fuck that. Um, I want to be able to project something bright and beautiful and wonderful into the future because
yeah,
these people are they're part of a grand conspiracy, and I'm not embarrassed to say that they're part of a millennia year old conspiracy, which has been co-opted by dark energetic forces. So
Mm.
there are people that are the proxies of that, and I'm not going to go any further down that line at all.
Yeah,
Other,
yeah.
other than to say there are people, they're not all a particular type, but they're very often to be so. So we know that. So what do you do about that? I mean, we don't seem to have much that we can do personally speaking, in interaction wise. You know, you can go out on the streets and you can protest about this and that, all the rest. And these days they're so blatant, they don't give a toss. So they don't even engage with people anymore. In the previous, back in the even back in the 2010s, 15s or whatever,
Yeah.
the governments would still engage with people saying we don't like that, and they make a show of it. Now they don't even they make a show of it. They just ignore you. Is that I
Well, for
saw
the it's
Trudeau
like
walking through a crowd of people in
ah,
Canada, and they're shouting them. Yeah, they're just tearing the guy to pieces, and he just completely ignores it. Goes on walking. It's like what you've got to be part of something which you think you're so protected in your
mm.
little unit, that it's never going to touch you. But people are getting angry now. They're getting very angry.
I think it goes down that route where I think it was a band, Le Bach, that I listened to, and it's this theory that he kind of they allude to sort of look, it doesn't matter. We sing about this, we sing about that. Some people say, "Oh, you're right wing," and some say you're left, some say you're this. He says, "Look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you truly know how the world works. It doesn't matter."
Hmm. Yeah.
uh, Again, and it's that sly slipping that in because we're all caught up in it. I mean,
Yes.
if you, I'm not going to pick on Christianity or anything like that, but at the end of the day, they could cry foul, say, about occultists and things like that. Oh, that's just ritual. That's just that. But hey, every Sunday you go in there, that's a ritual.
Yeah. Of course it is. Johnny,
You know, if you've got these paraphernalias going on, you know.
it's all that goes with it. Yeah, the whole thing. So we're starting to run toward the end of time here. So
Yeah.
I'm going to, I guess, have a quick pick around. I was going to invite you to the Baron's picnic. I was going to allow our metaphorical picnic blanket and put all these dishes before you, but you've preempted me on that. So I had five different dishes, five delicious concoctions here, and it's been a complete waste of my time preparing and cooking this feast for you. But however,
Well, I've got this habit of kicking over tables, so it doesn't matter. Do your own thing, man.
but I think we've covered most of the stuff I had in there
Yeah.
anyway. So yeah, that very interesting talk there. And all power to you, doing your thing, walking your journey as well. And I usually kind of wind up these talks with people um by asking people of our generation, now that we've accumulated a degree
The
of
years.
wisdom, at least we hope,
Yeah.
to be able to kind of like summarize that and say, what are the lessons that you've learned from life, and what lessons, what advice would you give to anybody just starting out on the journey?
I think it's really just a starting out in a journey. Just follow the path as you see. Didn't get hung up on too many things. Me as a personal, which everything's personal. I mean, I am a spiritual character, but it's nothing to do with God's. It's something more than that. There's something there. I believe in that type of thing. Uh, Too many coincidences and things for that. Uh, and basically, all I would say is to people out there, I mean, it's good to affirm that there is something out there that is much bigger than us, but is still part of us. So may you walk in love, light, and peace. And
That's a cool way to end it.
Kim, what I
Um,
mean,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, I agree. I think there are so many things that we can agree with, basically around that principle. As Scruff was putting it as well, just be nice to each other too. So Johnny, thank you for your time and for sharing with
It's
us some of your
it's been
insights.
my absolute pleasure, Rob.
Yeah,
Absolute pleasure.
and again, thanks for being a pal. And I'll sign off now from the windy Western Isles, which you probably know very well yourself, and uh, and head back into my somewhat idyllic lifestyle, at least. Okay, my
See you
friend.
around, mate. See you
All
around.
right, all the best. You take care. Bye bye.
Take care.